now for Talk Media News, made possible by our sponsor, Beth Ernest and Associates Real Estate. Beth Ernest's team of real estate brokers have been serving the Portland area for over 22 years, specializing in residential real estate, lots, and land. More at bethernest.com. Talk Media News is here with us. We are pleased to welcome Tom. There you are.
Here I am.
Tom Squitieri, thank you for being here with us. What do you have
Good morning.
for us
Happy
today?
Friday.
Good morning. Happy Friday to you.
Now, tell me, you're in Portland, Maine, right?
Portland, Oregon.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, Portland, Oregon. Yay, West Coast. Wake up for me. I'm glad.
So better than the other way around.
Conversation prior to the break.
Oh, you've been listening in?
On the Senate vote, and it was very interesting indeed. Since I covered the Pentagon, and, when President Trump announced withdrawal from Syria in particular, you used the word dumbfounded, and that's one of the great words that described the hallways there. I mean, it was just total surprise to everybody,
Yeah.
and they recognized quickly the danger of a quick pullout destroying the progress made against ISIS.
Absolutely.
You could disagree with whether the U.S. troops should be there or not, and I don't really, have an opinion on that, obviously. I look at it from what the Pentagon says of the tactical reasons for being there, and just the announcement just threw everybody off. So that Senate vote this week was really heartening to the Pentagon folks because they realized it gives them maybe a little bit of breathing room to do a withdrawal properly. People often think that a withdrawal, you just, okay, we're done. It's like leaving your hotel room, lock the door, drop the key off. It's not, because you're very vulnerable when you leave a country or leave an area, because the enemy knows you're leaving and there's only certain routes out. So
good point.
You have to have a secure withdrawal. Yeah.
And do we have that currently?
No, we don't.
TBD.
because they weren't preparing to do that.
Right.
Now they did remove some mechanized equipment and stuff that you can drive out that comes in and out anyway. But if you have a date, let's just make this date up so the listeners don't think this is what's real. But let's say you're going to withdraw by May 1st. Okay, so there's, remember, it's a desert out there as well. There's not a lot of roadways to move equipment out, and they can fly things out as well. But eventually, you can't get everybody out at the same hour. In other words, you just can't move everyone out at the same time. So there are going to be people who are going to be the last ones out that'll be more vulnerable unless you have protection. But usually, the odd thing about this is when you pull people out, you have to first send people in who are designed to protect those people leaving, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's their specialty. So it's not just as simple as saying, okay, this barracks leaves today, these trucks leave tomorrow. It's not like when they withdraw, if they ever withdraw from the U.S.-Mexico border, that's different. They can just go back to their bases in the United States whenever they're ready. There's no threat to those troops down there. It's not like that in Afghanistan or Syria or any of these other places, even Iraq to a lesser extent today. You have to have a secure withdrawal. And this is not me talking up the Pentagon side. This is just a fact on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, that just sounds like common sense. I mean, I think anybody on the ground in the situation would feel the same way.
Exactly.
It's almost as if you're saying that our president doesn't understand anything about military tactics and maybe was never in the military.
He doesn't show that publicly, such knowledge, if he has it. How's that for?
That was very well put.
Again, I'm not trying to name drop here, but I do cover the Pentagon, and I ask folks, do you think? And I've asked them bluntly, basically, do you think the White House gets it, or how often do you have to sort of explain things to people at the White House? And one of them every day, sometimes every day. Now, part of it is, to be fair to people, people do not understand. Like what I just said about the withdrawal, it's common sense, but a lot of people don't think of that. And then you tell them about it, and they say, oh, yeah, I understand. Like you just said, that's common sense. But you may not have known that this morning, when the show started.
Of course.
That's how it is. So you and I and other folks, we don't know the intricacies of how the military has to work in certain circumstances, nor should people at the White House who this is not their job every day.
Sure.
But there's a difference of not knowing and being willing to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like we just had the discussion. Oh, that makes common sense. Those words you said really epitomizes what I'm saying.
Right.
To them, the common sense isn't getting there at the White House on these things.
No.
That's the difference.
And also, I'm happy to admit that I don't know anything about military tactics, but I'm also not sending out tweets that are going to immediately change, what our military is doing.
That's the other thing. That's what bothers them so much, because one of the other important things to remember about the military is it's a loyal organization. The commander-in-chief is the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief. And whatever he or she does as commander-in-chief, they will do. And so they never, people will ask me, what's the Pentagon's opinion on the State of the Union, for example? And they're not going to have one. They don't comment on political stuff. They look at a State of the Union message or any kind of message. Okay, what do we have to do? So in the situation in Venezuela now, for example, there are military options always on the table for every country in the world. And they update them regularly. And because Venezuela is sort of on the front burner, there's more of a focus on what they have to do there. They're not going to tell you whether they think a decision on the White House, whatever it is on Venezuela, is good or bad. They'll just tell you how they're going to implement it. Okay? Because they're not partisan, but they are aware of the dynamics of a decision when you publicly announce it ahead of time that we're going to pull out of Syria in 2 months or whatever the tweet said,
right?
Or we're going to leave Afghanistan now. It's not a question of whether we should be there or not. It's a question of, is that wise to announce to the world what you're doing, especially when you don't tell your folks at the Pentagon ahead of time.
Oh, if only this was a reality show and not reality. Tom, we only have a few more minutes, but what else have you got for us today? What else is going on in the world?
Well, you mentioned that vote, and I thought that was a good part. I grasp for anything that's bipartisan in the city. And they're working another bipartisan thing on border security. We don't have a lot of time, I realize that. But they're actually making progress. I do think there's a slightly new dynamic here in Washington that begs bipartisanship. Democrats have one chamber, the Republicans have the other. Elections are coming up in 2 years. More Republican Senate seats are up for election. So I think all those elements, and plus the shutdown, had an impact. These people heard from constituents who were upset and angry, constituents who realized what the government does for them almost every day. And that has strong impact on them, at least now. Whether that persists through this year, of course, will remain to be seen. But I take that as a glimmer of hope as the year begins, as the second month of the year begins.
That might be the first time we ever heard that phrase from talk media.
At least in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Second month of the year.
Yeah. Okay, 2019.
Things might be looking up.
Any other thoughts on, again, thinking about where troops are going, about Trump sending troops to the U.S. border? I know you said they're not an active danger there.
They announced this week they're going to send more troops, additional troops to the border. And that's very odd because they haven't said why those troops are going there. Currently, the active duty troops there, they do aerial surveillance and provide medical care and help string wire and provide sort of support like that. They've been sort of done with those duties other than the ongoing aerial surveillance. So why a doubling of troops is necessary at the border at this time has not been explained.
The only thing that I could find yesterday was that he's having troops put up like barbed wire as sort of a rudimentary
they've been doing
fence.
That's what they've been doing since they've been down there.
Oh, absolutely.
Primarily.
But
yeah.
I think, honestly, I think it's all a show. I think it's look how many troops we need at the border. We have to put up so much barbed wire to keep these caravans of people out. Don't we obviously need a wall?
But that's I don't mean to interrupt you. However, I did. but the fact
okay.
is they don't have that much wire available, and also you can't. No, I'm serious.
I know,
They're
it's
talking
just
about how
so
much
hilarious.
wire they do have available. And secondly, you're not going to be putting wire in the middle of the Rio Grande River. You're not going to be putting wire in some parts of New Mexico. So the idea that you're going to put wire in the entire U.S.-Mexico border is just not realistic.
Oh, sure,
so
absolutely.
There's something else, reason why those troops are going down there, which I haven't learned, nor apparently any of my colleagues have learned as of yet.
It's so strange that we just go along with these. I mean, what else can you do? But it's just such a weird, like, oh, okay, we're sending 3,500 troops to the border.
Here's the other aspect that people forget. Some people forget that since last April, almost a year now, it's getting closer to a year. There's been about 2,300 National Guard troops on the border. Now, not the same troops. Obviously, they rotate in and out. But National Guard folks are everyday citizens like you and I. And so they're leaving their jobs and they're going to serve their National Guard commitment duty on the border. And that's pretty disruptive to those individuals and their families as well.
That's a very good point.
And for what reason?
Right. That's. I feel like you could ask that question about a lot of things happening in this administration.
I always like to pause and listen carefully to what people say. And recently, President Trump, in talking about the need for a border wall, he said how these caravans are coming up, and we just stopped two other caravans from coming up. He said that about a week ago. We just stopped two. Okay, so I asked myself, okay, how did you stop them? If the wall's not there, if these troops weren't there, how were they stopped?
Good point.
And I'm not trying to throw it in his face. I want to know how were they stopped, because obviously if they were stopped, let's use the lessons learned from that and apply that to future things.
Right. Why do you need a $10 billion wall if whatever is happening down there is currently working?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very good point.
You're being too logical.
It's a good point you make there.
Yeah.
Logic is not something that we usually...
I did want to point out that our Oregon Governor Brown actually said Oregon's not sending our national troops to the border. She doesn't believe it's an emergency.
Was right on. They said that early last year when they first were asking for troops. I think that's when right? It's been a while.
Yeah,
I don't think any Oregon troops have been there.
Yeah, exactly. Even starting in 2018. So she's like, nope, I'm not playing in that.
We are not interested. Thank you. Gosh, I love living in Oregon. Tom Squitieri, we are out of time, but thank you so much for being here with us. And we will talk to you soon, because obviously there's lots of news to catch up on.
Okay, have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend yourself. Talk Media News segment was brought to you by Beth Ernest and Associates Real Estate. Lots of land at bethernest.com. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with even more news. Stick around. This is X-Ray, where radio is yours.